The sun was barely kissing the water when that shrill voice sliced through the Arizona morning like a cheap steak knife. "Excuse me, Mr. Brooks. Just what do you think you're doing on that dock?" There she stood, Karen Whitaker, president of the Whispering Pines HOA, sun hat the size of a satellite dish, clipboard clutched like a holy relic. I kept casting my line, calm as the lake itself. "Fishing, Karen. On my dock. On my property." She planted her sensible flats like she owned the whole damn valley. Section 4.7 of the covenants clearly states, no unauthorized aquatic activity without board approval. The water is a shared community asset. That'll be $150, payable by Friday, or we'll place a lien. For the good of the neighborhood, of course. For the good of the neighborhood. That was her favorite line, delivered with the same fake smile she used at every potluck while she measured your grass with a ruler. Whispering Pines looked like paradise on the postcards, red tile roofs, saguaro cacti glowing at sunset, families waving from golf carts. But inside those gates, Karen had turned community standards into her own little police state. No flags after Memorial Day. No basketball hoops visible from the street. And apparently, no man could enjoy a quiet morning with a rod and reel without written permission from Her Majesty. I smiled, reeled in an empty hook, and nodded. "I'll look into that." She huffed off in her golf cart, already scribbling more violations on her precious clipboard. That night I didn't sleep. I read every page of the HOA bylaws, the original developer docs, the county records. And there it was, buried in faded ink. The lake wasn't community property. It had belonged to a long-dissolved development company whose final assets had quietly defaulted years ago. The state was accepting sealed bids. Next morning I made 3 phone calls, wired the money, and by Friday the lake, every drop, was mine. I didn't send a letter. I didn't post signs. I just waited. 3 days later Karen rolled up again with her 2 favorite lapdogs, Carl the treasurer and Darlene the secretary, clipboards raised like pitchforks. "For more citations, Mr. Brooks. That's $600. Failure to pay triggers foreclosure proceedings on your dock." I handed her a crisp manila envelope. "Open it." She did. Her eyes narrowed, then widened, then turned the color of a bad sunburn. "You bought the lake?" "Every cubic foot. Which means every permit you've been selling for kayaks, paddleboards, and approved fishing is now revoked. Effective immediately. Oh, and that fancy community dock you built. Unauthorized. Tear it down by Monday, or I'll have the sheriff do it for you." Carl actually sputtered. Darlene's mouth opened and closed like a beached trout. Karen tried the smile again, the one that usually made grown men apologize for breathing. "This is ridiculous. We'll fight this." I shrugged. "Fight away. But the lake's private property now. Your rules don't float here anymore." She didn't fight fair. She fought dirty, the only way she knew. First came the anonymous complaint to the county environmental office demanding an ecological audit. 3 guys in reflective vests showed up at dawn with clipboards and attitude. I met them at the water's edge, holding the laminated deed. "Private land, gentlemen. Leave or I call the sheriff for trespassing." They left, but not before one muttered, "Lady said you'd say that." Next, half the lakeside homes got letters, dock permits under review for possible habitat disruption. My neighbor Ellie, a retired teacher who'd lived here 30 years, showed up at my door with fresh cookies and shaking hands. "They've never cared about any of this before, Cole." "Why now?" "Because they can't control the water anymore," I said, "so they're trying to scare everyone into thinking they still can. Tell them to ignore it. I've got your back." The midnight visit was her masterpiece. Security footage caught 2 figures in hoodies wrapping my dock in orange, under investigation, tape at 3 a.m. One of them was clearly Darlene, same awkward limp from that hip replacement she bragged about at every meeting. I printed the stills, drove straight to the sheriff's substation, and pressed charges for trespassing, vandalism, and impersonating county officials. Deputy Ramirez raised an eyebrow. "That's bold even for Whitaker." By the weekend every lakeside yard had my bright red signs. "Private lake. HOA has 0 authority." Karen called an emergency board meeting. I wasn't invited, but Ellie recorded it on her phone. The audio was gold, Karen ranting about regaining leverage, Carl mumbling about insurance risks, and Karen shutting him down with "This is an executive decision." Executive decision. The exact phrase their own bylaws said required a full vote. My lawyer, Lance, filed the lawsuit the next morning. Harassment, misuse of HOA funds, tortious interference. Karen tried every trick: continuance requests, fake reclassification of the HOA as a special oversight entity. The judge, a no-nonsense woman who'd seen every power trip in the county, shut her down in 30 seconds. No ownership, no standing. Case closed on your side. Mr. Brooks, your injunction is granted. The HOA is barred from any further communication about this lake. But the real earthquake came during discovery. Lance's team peeled back the financials like rotten wallpaper. Fake landscaping contracts paid to shell companies. Consulting fees wired to an account in Karen's maiden name. Over $87,000 vanished into a phony community education foundation that existed only on paper. Lance slid the folder across my kitchen table. This isn't sloppy bookkeeping, Cole. This is felony embezzlement. Wire fraud. Possibly racketeering if we tie in the intimidation campaign. I handed everything to Deputy Ramirez. By sunrise the next day, a patrol car sat in Karen's driveway. She came out in her robe, hair still in curlers, clutching her phone like a shield. The officers handed her the warrant folder. She didn't scream. She just stood there, mouth open, as the desert wind flipped the pages of her precious bylaws. The recall vote was a landslide. 68-2. Karen resigned the night before for health reasons, but the DA wasn't buying it. They picked her up at the Phoenix airport trying to board a flight to Mexico under a different name, 2 burner phones, a briefcase of cash, and a one-way ticket. 14 felony counts. Bail denied. The new board, led by Ellie, cleaned house. Every improper fine from the last 3 years was reversed. Nearly $14,000 refunded. I offered the neighborhood a free, no-strings license to use the lake for recreation, as long as no permits, no fees, and absolutely no HOA oversight ever again. They signed it right on my dock while the sun set over the water like it was celebrating too. These days the only clipboard you see around here belongs to Ellie, and she uses it to organize potlucks. Kids skip stones again. Neighbors fish without looking over their shoulders. And every evening when I walk down to my dock, cast my line, and watch the water turn gold, I remember the woman who thought she could control an entire community with nothing but ink and attitude. Turns out the only thing she ever really controlled was how spectacularly she'd bury herself. True or false? In neighborhoods where HOA rules are sold as civilization but enforced like a dictatorship, is the real abuser of power the one who finally buys the lake and fights back, or the clipboard tyrant who spent years weaponizing community against its own people? Drop your verdict below. Did Karen get exactly the karma she ordered, or did the system protect her too long? Let's talk.